This question comes from Max, who asks, what if the atmosphere extended all the way into space? At first glance, it might seem like a harmless thought experiment. After all, the air is just above our heads. But stretching Earth's atmosphere into space would change almost everything about life, physics, and even the planet's orbit. Let's start with what we mean by the atmosphere. Right now, Earth's atmosphere thins out gradually as you go higher. By about 100 kilometers above the surface, you're essentially in space. The density of air at that height is near zero, and satellites orbit freely without significant drag. If the atmosphere extended all the way to, say, the moon, things would get very strange.
The first problem would be air resistance. Satellites and spacecraft rely on the vacuum of space to orbit the Earth. If the atmosphere continued outward, there would be friction, enormous friction. Satellites would slow down rapidly, heating up from air drag, and eventually burn up or crash back to Earth.
Not just satellites, meteors, space debris, and even the moon itself would be affected over time. Every object moving through the extended atmosphere would experience drag, changing its orbit. The moon could slowly spiral toward Earth, and all distant space missions would face impossible resistance.
Next, the density of this hypothetical atmosphere. Air pressure decreases with height because gravity pulls the gas down. To extend it to space, you'd need either extremely light gas or some new physics to keep it from collapsing.
Otherwise, it would compress under its own weight, creating crushing pressures near the surface. We might end up with an atmosphere hundreds or thousands of times denser than today.
Now, let's think about the heat. Currently, the thermosphere is already hot, thousands of degrees Celsius. But there's almost no matter, so it doesn't feel hot. Stretching dense air into space would mean energy from the sun could heat the upper layers, transferring enormous heat down to Earth. The surface could become uninhabitably hot in many regions, while the upper atmosphere would glow like a continuous aurora. Another consequence would be weather. If the air extended that far, jet streams, storms, and hurricanes could reach unprecedented sizes. Cyclones might stretch halfway to space, and pressure differences would become catastrophic. Basically, the concept of weather would explode to a planetary scale we can barely imagine. Breathing would also be a problem. The air near the surface might be far denser, making it harder to move and breathe.
Even humans adapted to high-altitude conditions would struggle. At the same time, gases that are normally rare, like carbon dioxide or methane, could accumulate, altering the chemical balance of the atmosphere drastically.
And then there's the effect on gravity. The atmosphere has mass, and stretching it into space would add a huge amount of weight.
Earth's gravity might increase slightly, pulling everything down harder. Satellites, the moon, and even tidal forces would change. Oceans might bulge differently, making tides unpredictable.
One interesting upside: you could technically float in air much higher than we currently can. Skydiving to the edge of space might become possible without a pressure suit. But the friction from the extended atmosphere would still make any high-speed fall dangerous.
Another weird effect would be on sunlight and stars. Air molecules scatter light. That's why the sky is blue. With dense air stretching far beyond the atmosphere, the sun would appear much dimmer from Earth orbit, and stars might be nearly invisible from the surface. Space would no longer look black. It might be glowing with scattered sunlight.
Communication and electronics would also be affected. Radio waves travel through the atmosphere, but a denser, extended atmosphere would interfere with satellites and long-distance transmissions. Global navigation, internet satellites, even weather satellites would all need redesigning.
So, while the idea of an atmosphere stretching into space sounds poetic, the practical implications are catastrophic. Satellites, spacecraft, and space exploration would be nearly impossible. Weather, gravity, breathing, and even sunlight would change in extreme ways. Human life might survive near the surface, but it would be drastically different from what we know today.
In the end, a space-reaching atmosphere is a reminder of just how delicate the balance of our planet is. Earth's current atmosphere may seem thin and fragile, but it's perfectly tuned for life, satellites, and space exploration.
Stretching it into space might sound amazing, but in reality, it would transform Earth into something unrecognizable, beautiful, chaotic, and probably uninhabitable for humans as we know them.